Hello my dear friends and welcome to StudyIQ. I am Joycey Joy and today in this lecture we will discuss about the CBI's intervention in the ICICI Bank case. Now coming to the current affair, the CBI, that is the Central Bureau of Investigation, has recently filed a case against a few for allegedly cheating the ICICI Bank of around 1730 crore rupees. So, the CBI or the Central Bureau of Investigation has already initiated cases or filed FIR or the investigation report against a few for cheating the ICICI Bank. So, based on this, let us understand what is the CBI's intervention in the ICICI Bank case. Now, let us understand what is the allegation. CBI has filed the cases against a few, which includes the former ICICI Bank MD and CEO Chanda Kochar and also her husband Deepak Kochar. So, the former heads of the ICICI Bank, including the MD and the CEO Chanda Kochar and her husband Deepak Kochar, is also involved in the case filed by the CBI. And along with this, the Videocon Group Managing Director Venugopal Doot and firms run by Deepak Kochar and the Videocon Group are also under the CBI's charge. There is an alleged nexus between the Videocon Group and the New Power Renewables Limited of Deepak Kochar. The CBI has filed charges of criminal conspiracy, cheating, abuse of official position. These charges are against the former CEO and MD Chanda Kochar on the grounds that she has dishonestly sanctioned loans to the Videocon Group. And the first registered preliminary inquiry is into the sanctioning of loan by Chanda Kochar of around rupees 3,250 crore in the year 2017. And the controversy here is that the same amount of loan was declared as bad loan in the same year itself. Now let us understand what is the significance of this case, or why does this case become significant with regard to CBI or the Central Bureau of Investigation. Now this case has provided a ground for the CBI to prove its mettle. So this case is going to be a test for the CBI on its roles and responsibilities. We have already seen in the past few months that the Central Bureau of Investigation was in the news for the wrong reasons. So definitely this case will have a bearing on the CBI's future anti-corruption drives. And in this regard, the Supreme Court judgment in the year 2016 is very relevant. So what does the Supreme Court judgment say? It says that private banks can be treated on par with the public sector banks or the state-owned banks in terms of Prevention of Corruption Act. So considering the Prevention of Corruption Act, the private sector banks can also be considered on par with the public sector banks. Now, Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. It is an act of the Parliament of India enacted in order to combat corruption in the government agencies and public sector businesses in India. So, according to 2016 judgment, under the Prevention of Corruption Act, private banks can also be considered on par with the public sector banks. That means the private sector banks need not be exempted from the Prevention of Corruption Act. Here, a successful prosecution of the ICICI case will help the CBI to bring back its accountability in a situation where the accountability of the CBI has been put on a test. Also, a very important impact of this CBI interference into the ICICI case would be on the board governance of the banks. This can be public sector banks and also private sector banks. We have seen that a major issue hampering the banking sector in India is the rising NPA or the non-performing assets. So, private sector banks as well as public sector banks are badly impacted with this increasing NPA or non-performing assets. So, one reason for this mounting NPA is the poor governance structure in the banking system of the country. So, the involvement of CBI in the ICICI case will effectively impact the board governance of the banking system in India. Increasing NPA or any type of corruption or fraudulent activities connected with banking system is definitely a sign of failure of the board oversight and the performance of the bank boards or the governance of boards. It is an evidence that there is an inability with the bank boards in order to deal with the interest of the banks at large, the shareholders, the customers, and finally it shows that there is an improper management of the funds of the banks. So, involvement or interference of CBI in the ICICI case will definitely bring in a difference in the board governance of the banking system in India, which will have an impact on reducing the NPA, increasing the profitability, and also improving the efficiency of the working of banks in India. Now the CBI has taken up the case. Now what lies ahead, or what more should the CBI do? The CBI has taken the first step in filing the case. But now what lies ahead is to take the case forward, or to process the case forward. In many instances, in the cases of bank frauds in India, we have seen that the cases get dragged or they completely get quashed in between. So this should not happen in this case. Now, on the other hand, what challenge more has to be overcome is that banks should not adopt a ultra conservative approach. Now, what is meant by an ultra conservative approach? It means that the banks will take up a monetary tightening policy. So this means that the banks will tighten the norms for lending. Now, because there are more instances of frauds or NPAs or failure of repayments, and investigation agencies like the CBI taking up the cases, there are more chances that banks will adopt a tightening norm or a conservative approach towards lending. So this will have a serious impact or implication on the economy. It will impact the financial stability, it will impact growth, it will have an impact on the investment or the gross capital formation, and it will also impact the fiscal consolidation. So the investigating agency must make it sure that it does not impact the balanced situation in the economy. The balance should be properly maintained. So if the banks adopt a conservative approach or tighten the lending conditions, the credit availability or the credit outflow into the economy will come down. So this will impact the gross capital formation or the investments. So when investments come down, the production or the productivity will come down. Therefore, the GDP will come down, and therefore the growth of the economy will also come down. So the investigating agency should make sure that the investigation does not hamper the credit availability or the lending market of the economy. Now let us discuss a UPSC Mains model question. The question is, the NPA crisis is the product of not only the failure of banking governance but also due to failure of institutions like the judiciary and the CAG or the Comptroller and Auditor General. Comment. This is the question. Now I'll give you a brief outline on how to answer this question. You can attempt to write this answer and you can email me your answers to joycey.studyiq@gmail.com. You can start your answer by explaining what is NPA or a non-performing asset. You can give the definition here. In the second paragraph, you can explain about the NPA crisis. Here you can explain about the NPA crisis in both public sector banks and in the private sector banks. Next, you can explain about the reasons for this crisis. There are many reasons like the failure of banking governance, the failure of institutions like the judiciary, CAG, etc., improper monitoring mechanism, etc. Now, you can mention about the solutions. So, in the solutions, you can mention about strengthening the bank governance, and also you can mention about improving the role of the institutions. So here you can mention about what are the roles or the responsibilities of institutions like the judiciary and the CAG. This can be the format of your answer. So everyone, please try to attempt this question and send your answers to joycey.studyiq@gmail.com. You can find the PDF of this lecture on my Facebook page, and also for any queries regarding your UPSC preparations, you can get in touch with me on my Facebook page or you can email me. Thank you.